At Cal State Fullerton, 58% of our students are Latina. But what does that mean in terms of how we teach, how we serve, how we research? We have the pleasure of having Dr. Alejandro Gradilla back with us from Chicano Studies to understand what a Hispanic serving institution is and what is the status in the U.S. today. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Can we start with some basics? What is a Hispanic serving institution?
Excellent. A Hispanic serving institution has at least 25% Hispanic or Latina enrollment in their universities. What we see in terms of the national numbers, according to the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities, there are currently 571 HSIs nationwide, plus 401 emerging as HSIs. In fact, Cal State Fullerton nationally is known as an elder HSI campus. So we have a unique distinction here at Cal State Fullerton.
Mm-hmm. And this is a federal designation, a state designation. Who decides? Who's counting? Who's categorizing?
Great question. Great question. So in 1992, the federal government designated Hispanic serving as a part of the amendments to the Higher Education Act. This was done at the urging of the very new and young at the time Hispanic Congressional Caucus, who realized that we needed to have a national strategy, especially emerging out of the Cold War, for this up and coming boom of Hispanics, Latinos across the country who were going into higher education at larger and larger numbers, and they felt that they needed a plan. And this was meant to be parallel in many ways to the historically Black colleges and universities, which have a different history. And so when you think about HSIs, Hispanic serving institutions or minority serving institutions, the tribal colleges, the historically Black colleges and universities, those branches truly operate in a different function. But what HSIs tried to do was really meet the needs of this population. And in 1995, under the Federal Title V Act, the federal government gave funding to HSI. So there was a funding mechanism. So it wasn't just a designation of a certain enrollment. It now had a funding mechanism to create grants to help faculty do research, to target different student success strategies to help student graduate.
Are there other things? So it sounds like, okay, so once you reach a certain percentage, you have access to apply for certain grants, or is the federal government automatically giving campuses additional funds?
So there are a couple of steps. When you receive the federal designation of an HSI, you then are eligible to apply for these federal grants. These federal grants are institutional focused grants. They're not just to help Hispanic students. These are truly meant to help that pipeline in terms of faculty doing research or faculty needing to upgrade their curriculum to meet the needs of this new population of students who tended to be low income, Pell eligible students, first generation, as well as language issues, as well as national origin issues. And so this was really meant to help the institution be ready for these students. And so a popular current myth or urban legend about Hispanic serving institutions is that there is some sort of racial intent or racial preferences or quotas, and that's not the case at all. Every single Hispanic serving institution, according to researchers as well as HACU, have stated that this is a demographic phenomenon. If we look here in California, the enrollments of Hispanic students or Latina students here is pure demographics. And so it's not that, and this is also the other side of the controversy for Hispanic serving institutions, is that many people who are critical of this designation say that Hispanic serving institutions aren't really serving, they're just Hispanic enrolling. But that points to the fact, as evidence, that this is a demographic designation to meet the needs of this new population that is now in the universities at larger and larger numbers. So it is not something that universities create special admissions to make sure they get more Hispanic students. It's just, this is who their applicant pool is, and this is who is being admitted. So that's the amazing thing about Hispanic serving institutions, while at the same time, we can see in this current climate why it's controversial.
Mhm.
And there is currently a lawsuit regarding the constitutionality of Hispanic serving institutions.
Oh, so yeah, what can you tell us about that? What is the status right now of this designation of Hispanic serving institutions at the federal level?
Well, you have two things. You have the lawsuit coming out of Tennessee, based off of the suit filed by the Students for Fair Admissions. And they claim that this is an unfair uh, racial program. And in particular, they are claiming that uh, because states like Tennessee do not have the number of Latinx students that Florida, Texas, and California, and those three states form the bulk of HSIs in this country, they feel that they are at a disadvantage for the federal funding for HSIs. And one of the things that I think is critical when we look at this lawsuit and the critiques of HSIs and other minority serving institutions is that um, there isn't a disadvantage. There are different funds that the state of Tennessee could apply to federally. And in fact, one of the things that could help states like Tennessee is tapping into the different TRIO monies. There are clearly Hispanic students in the state of Tennessee. A lot of it is what is the outreach, what is, and it's not creating preferences, but it's alerting this new population in a new receiving area, Tennessee,
Mhm.
and letting them know that they can apply to college, even if they're English language learners, even if they are the children of migrant farm workers. There are many federal programs that they are eligible, the state of Tennessee, to apply for and make up for the fact that they currently cannot apply for HSI funds.
Mhm. So right now there's a lawsuit. Is there anything else we should know about what's happening with the HSI designation?
Absolutely. So the Department of Education has basically removed the funding mechanism for HSIs. The designation still exists, but there is no more funding attached to that
Mm.
designation. Um, I believe the ANAPISI, that is the other designation for Native Americans, Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, that designation also was defunded. The tribal colleges and the HBCUs still have their funding, and the rationale was because they have a different history and a different origin, and that is accurate. But what this does is removes the funding mechanism to help universities like the Cal State system, like the California community colleges, to be able to meet the needs of their students in terms of professional development for the faculty, in terms of support services for first generation college students. Does your career center need a different way to reach out to people? Does student affairs need to offer more services in terms of basic needs? I mean, this is what HSI funding was helping out. And because it goes to the institution, and I have to go back to that point, that means the institution with those dollars serves every single student,
Mm.
low income white students, African American, Asian American. It does not exclude those groups because the funding comes to support the institution. If you support an institution like Cal State Fullerton with HSI monies, that is going to have a ripple effect to benefit everybody. In fact, I was part of the HSI federal grant for graduate education, and it was changing and impacting the advising that the graduate advisors are doing for all students,
Mm.
using Latinx students as kind of a template so that they could say, well, I notice they have issues in terms of multi-generational households, they have issues in terms of income. But then the graduate advisors realize, well, actually, a lot of the graduate students we serve here at Cal State Fullerton have that issue. So the
Mhm.
advising improved. And it's that type of investment in all of our students that these HSI grants provided opportunities, not just for our Latinx students, but for every single student. And I think that's something that we have to kind of look at in terms of how can we better represent the work that we're doing, as well as how we have used our federal dollars in the past. And
Mhm.
we for here at Cal State Fullerton in 2005, we became a Hispanic Serving Institution.
Yeah, let's drill into what we've seen happen at Cal State Fullerton once we became an HSI and how it's helped this campus.
Well, there's an interesting tie to the College of Humanities and Social Sciences with
Mm.
this. That is our former dean from the 1990s, Dr. Donald Castro, um, who, after becoming a dean, worked as an assistant to the president, then President Gordon, and he was tasked with finding federal dollars as well as other philanthropic opportunities to help the campus. And in 2005, Dr. Sayabrego, who was an AVP of Student Affairs, with their assistant, Victor Rojas, and numerous people, including Gina Garcia. And Gina Garcia was hired through our first HSI grant, and now she is the national expert in HSI research based out of UC Berkeley. So this grant is very important in terms of what it did and how it elevated our campus. So the first grant was called Institutional Strengthening and Capacity Building as a Hispanic Serving Institution. It had 4 goals: defining what it means to be HSI and needs assessment of Orange County's Latino community, math pedagogy improvement, student tracking and mentoring, and student success and leadership.
Mm.
So this one was STEM based, and in 2005, the grant um, was, what was the funding for it? It was about $2 million,
Mm.
and it was a um, truly a groundbreaking grant because we were part of different collaboratives here, and it really was meant to improve the outcomes that was data driven, that a lot of our first generation students struggled with math. And so this was really meant to help the math department and the College of NSM, Natural Science and Mathematics, to improve pedagogy for this new generation of students. Similar in the ways that we talk about and struggle over how to teach Gen Z the best, this was a similar phenomena. And so with this first grant, they were able to hire tutors, create learning communities, and really strengthen the work that the math department was doing to help students pass their lower division math requirements.
Mm.
So we truly had a cutting edge understanding of what and how HSI monies could be used,
Mhm.
especially in terms of student services as well as helping faculty with professional development. There are exclusive research grants that faculty could have gotten, but Cal State Fullerton was very good at building these capacity building grants. And I think this is something that is the hallmark of our campus. And this is why nationally, Cal State Fullerton is really designated as an elder HSI campus because we provide an example for other campuses. And in fact, in 2011, we had a Haku Walmart grant, and Student Affairs and myself were consultant mentors to another Hispanic serving institution
Mm.
because they wanted to follow the lead of everything that we were doing in their campus. And the other campus was New Mexico Highlands, a very well-known campus, very important during the Chicano movement. But they had issues in terms of having their institutional identity and practices to reflect what we were doing here to help their students.
Mhm.
So I think this question of HSI, Cal State Fullerton, the College of Humanities and Social Sciences, it really highlights the strength and the quality of work that we do and the success that we have with graduating students, getting our students into careers, and truly impacting our local community, Fullerton, Anaheim, Santa Ana, but impacting the region. So that's the one thing when you think about Hispanic serving and what we have done here at Cal State Fullerton, but also nationally, what this means is many communities benefit in a ripple effect from having this designation.
Mhm. Wonderful. I want to talk a little bit more about this distinction that you brought up between Hispanic enrolling and Hispanic serving, because there has been some critique of institutions that are designated as HSIs,
Right.
but maybe are not actually serving the population. And actually, Gina Garcia, who you noted, started our initiative here in 2005 is one at the forefront of some of these arguments. Can you walk us through?
Absolutely. So the distinction is, and there's always been a tension because one of the things when you look at the history of HSIs, it first starts with a collaboration of 16 academic institutions in 1985. They will go on to found in 1986 HACU, the Hispanic Association of Schools and Colleges, colleges and universities. And when you think about that impact, they had the vision that there was a need to do something in a collaborative, organized way. Through their lobbying of the Hispanic Congressional Caucus, they were able to get the HSI designations and funding. But it really, when you think about the tensions over Hispanic enrolling versus Hispanic serving and the idea of servingness, which is key to the transformative work that people do in minority serving institutions, and I'll get back to a definition of servingness in a minute, but the work that Latina folks did since the late 1960s is one reason why you have first generation Latina students around the country realizing that they can go to college. So when we have this term, we used to use the term a lot, underrepresented minorities. But when you look at the history, it truly was historically excluded populations. They were college educated, eligible. They did have the abilities to be in college, but they were not recruited. They were not envisioned as being part of the university. So you had a lot of activist work from the 60s, 70s, and 80s to build to that momentum once we start Hispanic serving institutions. So the controversy is you can have 25, 40, 50, 60%, 80% Latinx students in your university. But the question is, are you truly serving them? And so Gina Garcia talks about this concept of servingness. And it's the ways in which the institution is meeting or not meeting the needs of the students who they have in front of them. So servingness includes developing programs at HSIs where it creates access, opportunity, student success models where you're getting the students to think about careers as first year students. You're actively trying to retain students because we know that if these are first generation students, there are certain academic, personal, financial issues that they face. So the institution is being more proactive, not passive. There are many institutions that tend to be Hispanic enrolling and they're very passive. They're like, we graduate all students. I don't know what the particular needs of this population is. And when you think about that point of view, it really is the old model of college where you should be thankful for being here. It's your job to get out, not mine. But when you see an institution like that, you realize they haven't reflected on, do they have barriers? Do they have a lot of barriers to graduation? Does it make it, do students struggle to get through the curriculum to finish their major in a timely fashion? And what HSI and any other MSI designation does is it makes the institution think about what are we doing to help our students graduate. And that's one of the great things when you have a university with a servingness perspective, they are truly trying to figure out how do we get students from point A to point B and then C, which would be the career, um, so they can help their communities. And I think this is the great lesson that this campus has learned, and this is why we are an elder campus and why we do servingness so well. When you think about some of the programs that the college has, everything from DC Scholars to study abroad, right? How do we make these programs accessible to all students? Because if we create criteria that exclude students, then certain students with financial or personal or any other challenge may feel excluded from being able to go to DC or study abroad or many of the other great programs this college has, to use this college as an example. But we are very, I think we've been blessed with many deans here in this college who are very mindful about when you build it, we have to build it with equity, we have to build it with inclusion, we have to build it from its foundation up, because if not, then it unintentionally exclude students.
Yeah, yeah. I want to use the work you've done as part of Latinx Lab as another example at which having this build up from the bottom framework can really enrich pedagogy decisions that faculty make. So let's talk about the work you've done for Latinx Lab.
Absolutely. In our first Mellon grant for the Latinx Lab, we developed numerous projects. The project I worked with was kind of in the spirit of HSI work and servingness. One program, the Escritores Prometores, was a pipeline for graduate students into the faculty. That is, they got to do work with students and student success and not have to do the grading. So they weren't TAs. They were working with students outside of the classroom, helping them with papers, helping them with the psychological issues that block students from getting organized to start writing a paper or studying for an exam. So this really showed potential faculty in the future what how faculty actually work with students, right? It's not just grading, it's not just preparing for a PowerPoint for your lecture. It goes beyond that. It's about working with students, helping them. Literally, we always say meeting them where they're at, but what does that mean, right? And so for me, building a structured way of mentoring graduate students to be ready for meeting students where they're at and telling them, well, some students are going to come to you and they haven't done the reading yet, or they have been afraid to approach their professor. And we talked about, well, what are strategies to get that student beyond that block, right? What is it that we can do as students who were recently here as undergrads, who are now graduate students? How can they play a role in the success of that undergrad? And it worked because it did create a mentoring pipeline, because the students saw graduate students who they felt they could be in the future. So that opened that door. The other project I had was a summer institute, and the summer institute was meant to expose students to a traditional, with a little finesse, humanities institute for undergrads. You have many of these programs like McNair, you have the Mellon Mays program, but a lot of these programs have built-in aspects that inadvertently exclude students, whether it be a GPA issue, have to have letters of recommendation. So this institute was an open access institute. I had students from the honors program, and I had about 4 or 5 students who were academically disqualified. They felt they needed to prove that they could handle the work. And so one of the things that I realized pedagogically was that these students were experiencing, and this is part of the pedagogy of ethnic studies, but being able to label it thanks to the Mellon grant funding, I was able to finally reflect and label this. What these students had to do after engaging the work, being in the work, is the process of academically healing. But before they can academically heal, they had to academically undrown. That is, how do you purge the imposter? And when I say academic healing, people are like, well, what do you mean they have to heal? And many of our students come here, and even though they are college eligible, somebody in their path K through 12 told them they're not good enough. Their writing is inferior, or they're a bad writer. And all of this is like a snowball. And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, so that when they come to college and we ask them to do a 10 to 15 page paper, they freeze, because they haven't dealt with that injury, that academic injury from the 10th grade in AP English, where someone said they were not up to snuff. So part of what happens in ethnic studies is we have students do a critical reflection. So not only are they reading material, but they're also made to think about, well, how are you impacted by what we're talking about in the readings? And for many of the students, it was very transformational. And the second year in particular, I had a more diverse body of students. I had community college students, I had African American students, Asian American students, I had adult reentry students, but they all thrived with this idea of academic healing as well as undrowning. In Spanish, we say deshogar, which is the cultural practice of venting during a talk,
Mm.
getting it off your chest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because people know that when you're holding on to something, especially in your chest or in your spirit area, it's going to block your energy, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, bringing that cultural tool into the classroom, students recognized, oh, this is a chance for me to undrown. This is a chance for me to let out some of my pain. And I tell people this isn't therapy. It sounds therapeutic, but this could be a first step for the student to start thinking about, what kind of help do I need? Do I need university um, academic support, or do I need to go to CAPS and have therapy? But one of the things that is so powerful about academic healing and the undrowning process is that it's collective, so that students learn that they are not the freak, they are not the strange one, that everybody in that room had similar struggles and similar pain, and sharing that and collectively embracing these stories made it very powerful and salient to the students. And many of the students, once they, especially the returning students, their GPAs went up.
Mm-hmm.
They started thinking about grad school. A lot of these things became more concrete, as
Mm-hmm.
accessible and doable for them. So this is an example of servingness in terms of giving students 2 weeks with a professor. And this is something that the students told me. The first year, the students didn't receive any funding for
Mm-hmm.
participating. And the students said, 2 weeks with the professor, I'm going to sign up for it. And so this is a sign of how good Fullerton does servingness, but that our students are ready to plug into these type of servingness style activities to help themselves, right? Because one of the things about the summer program, 2 weeks, 6 hours a day, Monday through Friday, in person. They had their afternoons free, so they can continue to work. Um, the great thing about it was the students were like, I finally have a chance to exhale, breathe, and learn about the library instructions. Finally, hear the Career Center talks. During the semester, everything is so fast paced that this 2 week period allows me to actually hear, listen, and absorb the information.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that was a powerful reminder in terms of um, the information overkill that the students are feeling, and how we need to better spread that out and create opportunities throughout the entire academic year so the students can actually hear some of this.
Yeah. And I think also I want to add that the students were not getting academic credit,
Correct.
which, this too was really remarkable for me, because I think it highlighted what incentivizes our students to want to learn. Like,
Correct.
sometimes we think it's credit, sometimes we think it's money with fellowships, but sometimes it really is, as you noted, creating a particular academic environment and inviting students to actively participate.
Absolutely. And I think for me, coming out of ethnic studies, being inspired by the critical education scholar Paulo Freire, he talks about his work in the pedagogy of the oppressed, that the role of the educator is to be like a midwife. And
Mm.
when you get that metaphor in your head, and I'm very impacted by metaphors, um, the midwife isn't doing the work of the childbirth, the woman is.
Mhm.
And you realize, oh, as educators, we can't get the student to do what they need to do, but we can be there to support them in mind, body, and spirit. I mean, that's what a midwife does. Tell somebody along the way, you can do this. I will give you, some food, massage, whatever it is. But they're meeting the needs like a wraparound in
Mhm.
terms of, are you scared? Are you nervous? Are you fearful? Right? And when I realized, yeah, that is exactly what the ideal mentor, what the ideal guide, what the ideal pedagogical healer does with their students. They try to meet the the psychological and academic needs of a student, and not as a therapist. And I keep coming back to that. It's meeting the needs in terms of giving the student what they call in education validation. So this is like validation theory. You're
Mhm.
telling the students, you can do it. I mean, as parents, we see this when we are teaching our child how to ride a bicycle. There's points where we're holding on, and there's points where we secretly let go because we know they can ride the bicycle on their own.
Mhm.
And that pedagogically is what happens when you're doing servingness as well as meeting the needs of the students. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that you are correct in terms of students desiring more of that here at Cal State Fullerton. They really want to get to know our faculty, but we need to create those opportunities for them to meet and be with the faculty, right? We call this program a study here program, and I still think that it resonates in terms of giving our students a chance here, because one of the things that I saw with some of the students who returned to take classes with me, um, they they were different people. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they walked taller, they spoke more, and it really was powerful to witness the transformation, the belief
Yeah.
in themselves. And I
Mm-hmm.
think this is an example of the very advanced and sophisticated servingness that we do here at Cal State Fullerton, because some campuses are just struggling with the basic, how do we get them to keep on enrolling per semester? We have blown way past that. That's why we have the opportunity to do things like the Latinx Lab, like the different initiatives that we have here. But it also is great leadership to be able to see that helping one population actually helps everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And what's amazing to see, and the pride that I have in my college, is to see how transformed my colleagues are up and down the humanities building, but also the other buildings that we're in,
Mm-hmm.
but to see how transformed the faculty are in terms of meeting the students where they're at
Mm-hmm.
and bringing them along and giving them an experience that I tell people, there are students at Ivy Leagues who would wish to have the experience that we in this college at Cal State Fullerton give our students.
Yeah.
And I find that the most powerful aspect of servingness that this college does. And as you can see, the faculty are serving all the students. They're not just serving a few. And
Mm-hmm.
that's I think our brand is that we our model of helping students and student success is so comprehensive and inclusive, but it's now second nature. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what's so powerful about our college and the role model that we play for this university, but for the region and nationally.
Yeah. And I can't just sit in the glory, right? Like we can't like let's though talk about you have really laid out how we have such strong bones here.
Absolutely.
And there is so much we will be able to sustain, whether there's federal funding behind the HSI designation or not. And yet, I'm sure you also have ideas about what more we can do and how losing this grant access might not set us back, but might prevent us from growing where we could grow. So, what are the areas of opportunities that you do see?
I think one of the opportunity areas is definitely this question of how we communicate our knowledge that we're gaining here from Cal State Fullerton to the general public.
Mm-hmm.
I think many times the way we teach undergrads sometimes is mini graduate school. So the students learn very sophisticated technical language, which is important for graduate school. But our students have to be able to communicate, this is why I'm in college. This is why it's important. This is why Cal State Fullerton is important. This is why we need state dollars and federal dollars to continue to support the work that we do here at Cal State
Mm-hmm.
Fullerton. And I believe that we have to have an initiative of disciplinary communication with the general public. This is
Mm-hmm.
something that I've learned to do, speaking to the media directly, speaking to people on social media directly, working in these initiatives. You can be sophisticated, advanced, theoretical, etc., but you can also communicate it broadly.
Mm-hmm.
And when we think about academia, many of our disciplines have had these what we call popularizers, these people who write mainstream books not for academic audiences but for the general public. We need to commit ourselves, a part of our work, to learning how to speak to the public and
Mm-hmm.
speaking in different registries, as well as writing in different ways, right? And break from the formal writing structure and actually give students a chance to write very informal, very rough, but are they communicating with an audience? And I always tell students, it's important for you when you're writing these assignments for me to imagine your audience. Who are you writing for? And I always tell the students, you know, for me, I'm always conscious of the young lady in the back of the room wearing the hoodie with the chip black nail polish, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who's writing to her? Who's writing to the young man with the
Mm-hmm.
headphones who looks checked out but he's paying attention. But who's writing for him, right?
Mhm.
Who's writing for the grandmothers, right? Who's writing for the people who ride the bus, right? We have to bring our imagination
Mhm.
to say, I have an audience I'm imagining that I'm writing for and that I'm accountable to. And so I have to make sure that I bring the knowledge and speak to them in a way that is democratic and inclusionary, right? We think of inclusion as just institution, but verbal communication needs to be inclusion because there's ways I could use language that can exclude people real fast.
Mhm.
So, what is it about accessible language and speech that I think this college would be totally ready to do, thanks to series like this, getting us to talk directly to the public,
Mhm.
I think is going to be an urgent national, if not international, issue in terms of how do we talk about vaccines. We already have an initiative here, how to talk about delicate situations such as the Israeli Palestine situation.
Mhm.
So we are already doing some of the groundwork to talk to the public without pie charts, without six binders of information. How do we make people feel welcomed, respected, and then we could bring out all the charts and all the data
Mhm.
afterwards. But if people don't feel they can trust us, that's an issue because I think the new scholar of the future has to be somebody who does not rely on their authoritativeness and their eliteness. The
Mhm.
public is not doing that anymore. So we have to meet the public where they're at in terms of, okay, let's do a talk where I roll up my sleeves and I'm sitting there speaking with construction workers, the janitorial staff, gardeners, um, and I think that is going to be our big challenge. I guess democratizing knowledge,
Yeah.
making sure that
Yeah.
it breaks out of this campus and into the streets because people need it. They want it. I see my colleagues in PAJ, political science, struggle with the fact that most Americans don't understand how our Constitution works. In fact,
Mhm.
they have kind of this made up view of how the Constitution works. If people knew how the Constitution worked, we would see that executive power is actually very limited in
Mhm.
the Constitution. And I think these are urgent issues that are neither right nor left. They are neither part of any ethnic group. This is an urgency that's going to benefit everybody in terms of what is authentic, ethical storytelling
Mhm.
for the public. Because I think if we don't have that, we're going to get in a bigger and bigger hole. I also think that an initiative I would love to see is a series where we bring in well noted, well respected social media influencers and
Mhm.
bring them here and dialogue with them. Some of them are doing great local histories, they're doing digital storytelling, and it's actually quite good quality, right?
Mhm.
And they have 300,000 to a million followers, right? Something that as a faculty, we wish we would have that many people hearing us, right?
Mhm.
So it's about, I think, bridging the gap between social media influencers and experts with higher ed. And I think what they could learn, because many times I do reach out to some of these influencers and I say, hey, you might want to think about this scholar, you may want to think about this issue and think about it differently. And many times they'll come to me, they'll message me and they'll say, thank you for that. Because I am looking to work with scholars, but I feel a little embarrassed because I
Mhm.
only have a BA or I'm in community college right now. And you realize, wow, they've been able to do everything they've done and they don't have the credentials we have. So, how do we bridge that gap to where we can have partnerships, not change what they're doing, but how they can find better information so they have an ethical responsibility to transparent kind of information where they're getting it from, but also in terms of continuing their mission of spreading and popularizing a lot of the work that scholars have done, but also give us credit because there are certain historical events that some of these influencers cover and they don't give a nod to the scholar who actually dedicated their career to
Mm.
doing the work. So there are little things here and there and kind of explaining why that's important in terms of the knowledge isn't just sitting out there like wildflowers in a meadow. There are people who are doing the work, working with those communities, working with those historical subjects, and they're doing oral histories that you should give a nod to because there's a lot of work being done.
Yeah. Oh, such great ideas. Thank you, Dr. Gradilla, for helping us understand Hispanic serving institutions and how they open up access to education for all.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. And I think this is one of the things that when we talk about Cal State Fullerton and HSS pride, this is one of our points of pride.
Thank you.